Hello, everybody, and welcome to Aydt Picks, Week 3. Thank you all for subscribing to my YouTube channel. It's new. It helps me grow and realize my dream, and I'll be publishing this original cast from Facebook onto there, so many of you who have already watched it on here can at least, I'm not asking you to watch it again on YouTube unless you just want to, which would be awesome. But at least if you could do me a solid, and if you have a YouTube account, go on there and subscribe. It's under Chris Aydt, which is what I go by usually. Most people either call me Chris or Christopher. So my first and last name, you can find me on there. But first, coffee. So last week when I did the first initial casting on YouTube, I had pretty good feedback. One of my friends that watched it, I expect honesty from my friends, and they'll tell me honestly what they think. One of the feedbacks that I got, and I agree with that person, I don't have the resources now to do it. I mean, I could eventually, but I don't have a studio. But what he suggested was that I have stuff like on the wall behind me to make it more lively, as well as graphics. I just bought a new MacBook Pro, which will really help me aid the graphic aspect. I'm going to get good at that, and hopefully I can fix it myself. If not, I might have somebody do it for me. But first and foremost, before I begin the meat of the show, I'm taken back by the tragedy of the political assassination of Charlie Kirk. It was very sad, and there's many things in life that are more important than sports, and Charlie was an excellent young man who stood for the right things, including freedom of speech and foundations that made this country great. So we mourn his loss, and I ask you to join me in praying for his family. He was a man that believed in Jesus Christ and loved his God, and I believe he is with Jesus in heaven right now. I absolutely admired what he stood for, and he inspired me to speak my mind. Of course, I have to be careful in my profession because I'm under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, and so the First Amendment doesn't always apply to me. But thank you for your prayers for his family. He had such a beautiful family, and he's such a wonderful young man, and he challenged people really to think and openly debate. So that struck me yesterday. I was very sad about it, but his legacy will live on. Secondly, I want to, on a happier note, I will go back to football. I've been to Tiger Stadium. I went back in 2007 during Tebow's game there, or one of his two games there, when LSU actually won the national championship that year. I will give Tiger Stadium this. The reason that they say, that the media says that that's the toughest place to play, is not because of the noise. Yes, they've had an earthquake there, but if you study science, earthquakes are caused by an energy and not necessarily noise. They do have some rowdy fans. Those Cajuns know how to drink, boy. They are all hopped up on bourbon. And I got cussed out there. I'm not going to lie. I really had to I was with my cousin Melanie. My dad's brother lives in Alabama, and Melanie likes football a lot. And so her and I went down to Tiger Stadium. That was, like I said, that was 18 years ago. But we both had to hold our tongues. But yeah, it was a disappointing loss. But I don't understand why people say, like, I can understand the toughness and intimidation because of the way the fans are, and purple and gold are intimidating. But honestly, I've heard multiple louder games at Florida Field. It's the way that the stadium is built into the ground. I don't think anybody in the nation sits closer than us. I think over the past few years, Oklahoma State and their renovations, from what I was reading, may have sat the fans closer to the field a little bit. But historically speaking, the Swamp has had fans sit closer to the field than anyone else. And then combine that with it being in a pit, is multiple teams and players and coaches have said that they felt like the people were literally on top of them as far as the noise goes. LSU, yeah, it was loud when I went for the Tebow game, but honestly, the loudest stadium I've heard besides Florida was Neyland Stadium in Tennessee. Neyland Stadium was intimidating, and I say that takes the cake over LSU as well, because Neyland Stadium and the Swamp, in Neyland Stadium, you look up and you see people. And I went there in 2008 for a game. And when all those people are singing Rocky Top, that place goes nuts. And that was the only place, in addition to Florida Field, that I could not hear the person next to me talking to me. It was like being behind a jet engine. And I've been behind a few of them, being in the Air Force for 15 years. I've been on the flight line. And so that noise at the Swamp and then Neyland Stadium when they're rocking is comparable to that. And Neyland Stadium, I felt like the noise, that stadium shakes. I felt that at Florida Field as well a few times. So those two are the top in terms of noise. The old Orange Bowl, I sat in the closed section when Florida played Miami in 2003, a few years before they tore it down. And Brock Berlin came back and beat us. But I remember just my ears ringing because I was sitting in the closed end of the Orange Bowl. And those fans were beating on the metal bleachers. And boy, that stadium got loud. Texas A&M, that stadium got pretty loud too. I'd probably put LSU at 4 behind the old Orange Bowl, behind Neyland Stadium, and number 1, the Swamp, neck and neck. But yeah, my point is Tiger Stadium's intimidating, but it's because of the people. Like, I'm telling you, they are not classy. They will cuss you out, especially if you wear, I'm going to be brave and go, and I'm loyal to my team, I'm going to wear a Gator shirt. Fully anticipated, paid to get verbally berated and cussed out. It's just the nature of college football. But yeah, it's that's what makes it intimidating, and it's a hostile environment. And I'll preview the game more later. If this is a comeback game for Florida, I was so disappointed last week. I went on leave, saw my granddaddy. He's 88 years old. I saw him in DeLand, and still kicking. And I went there for his birthday, and then I came into town for a week, spent some time with my dad. He's doing well. I just got some shoulder surgery. His rotator cuff worked on. He's just got out of a sling, so I'm happy for him. But yeah, it was good to go to the USF game. And unfortunately, my Gators pooped the bed at the end and wouldn't have made it as sweet as it could have been for me. But I was happy to be at the Swamp, and give all credit to South Florida. They played their butts off. I think the problem, as I've said before, is in coaching. I don't think Napier has what it takes. And I hope he proves me wrong, but I haven't seen anything in that guy. I saw a great quote that says, you need a coach that's a psychopath, or that has psychopathic tendencies to win championships. in a lot of cases, that's true. Or at least somebody that likes to spout off and has personality to them. You know, that's a little bit of a jerk. Look at Saban, look at Meyer, to an extent, Dabo Swinney. I've heard he's kind of rough on his head coaches, even though he's a good Christian man at heart. But there's a time and place to turn it on. And I don't know if Napier has that gear as a head coach, is what I'm saying. Like, and nothing I've seen has made me believe that he's the guy at Florida to bring us back to the Gator standard of winning championships. But with that being said, he has the opportunity to prove me and all of Gator Nation wrong this weekend by getting a win at Tiger Stadium. With that being said, I'm going to name a few of my avenge wins, I should say, after bad losses when everybody thought Florida was done, that I've ever seen. The one of them being last year when Florida lost to Texas and everybody thought he was done, and then he won 4 straight. We beat LSU at home. Another goes to 1997. Florida actually lost at LSU, and we were ranked number 1 in the nation. And we had Doug Johnson threw like 2 interceptions late, and one of them was returned for a pick 6, and that was a difference in the game. LSU ended up beating us 28-21, and that was the first like regular season SEC game, something incredible like that we'd lost in like 2 or 3 years. And but after that, we bounced back and hammered Auburn. I remember that, like, Auburn was ranked ahead of us, and everybody was like, oh, because back then we used to play Auburn and LSU back-to-back before Georgia. And we ended up going into Auburn, a place where we hadn't won in many years. And that's when they still had Terry Bowden, I believe, or either that or he had just resigned. But I think they still had him. I think that was his last year, and then he got fired the year after. But yeah, they were favored, and then Florida goes in there, and I think Jamie Richardson. I remember that he returned the kickoff for a touchdown. Kind of set the tone there. I think it was either at the beginning or the second half. And another revenge game was which actually propelled us, Danny Warfel, the Heisman, and then us into the national championship, was in 96 when we lost to FSU in Tallahassee. And then the week after, we played Alabama in Atlanta, and I don't know if it was supposed to be like close or not. I don't quite remember. I think Alabama had like a top 15 team, but I remember it was close in the first half, and we just pulled away. I knew the game was won when Danny Warfel hit Jacquez Green on like a bomb. I remember that was on that old AstroTurf that looked like a carpet in the Georgia Dome, and that stuff you could just sprint on. And Jacquez Green beat his man down the sideline, and Danny Warfel threw a perfect pass right into his hands. And he trucked it all the way down the sideline. It was great. It was like a 90-yard bomb. And Florida ended up winning that game 45-30. And there was another few. I don't remember the Muschamp and Mack years. I remember Muschamp better than I did Mack, because for all of the Mack era, I never saw a game at Florida Field. I was in England the whole time, or deployed in Lithuania or Eastern Europe. And so, yeah, I remember listening to it at like 3 a.m, though, and being disappointed a lot. But I'm trying to think of 2 more revenge games. I think the one after we lost to Auburn in 2006, when we won the national championship that year, we lost to Auburn, and then we beat Georgia in the cocktail party. Yeah, that was a big game too. Like, we ended up out-muscling them. We out-muscled a lot of people that year. But that game, like, set the tone. We beat them 21-14. And then also, like, after we had that humiliating loss to Ole Miss that led to the Tebow speech in 2008, we ended up smacking everybody. Arkansas was the revenge game. We beat them like 38-7, and then after that, we beat everybody by double digits for the rest of the year. But I'm going to try to get an interesting topic every week, to keep y'all entertained. I hope you're enjoying. And I'm going to go ahead with the picks. So tomorrow there's a game. Actually, right now there's a game from like non-ranked teams, Wake Forest and NC State. I actually have that on in the background. But I usually, in my picks, I'll do the top 25, and then if Florida's unranked, playing an unranked opponent, I'll still pick them, and then I'll do a bonus game, and then I'll include the other D1 Florida schools, because a lot of my friends that watch this, unfortunately, are Florida State fans. Yeah, you asked me, how can I be friends with a Florida State fan? But rivalry aside, they're good people. And so tomorrow we have a game. Indiana, I heard they had the easiest schedule in the nation. But yeah, even if Florida had their schedule, Billy Napier would screw it up losing to Indiana State. Oh no, I don't know. But yeah, Indiana, they're number 22 and they're playing Indiana State. They shouldn't struggle at all. They win by the score of 34-6. The number one team in the land, the Buckeyes of Ohio State, play at home in Ohio Stadium. Me and my buddy, when I retire from the military one day and he is done with working, we made it a goal when we're retired to go to every single major college football station or stadium in the country that we haven't been to. I would really love to go to Ohio Stadium. For one, it's historic. It was built in the 1920s, and they actually had to re-terrace a river there, the Ohio River, or whatever. I think it's the Ohio River. I don't know. Whatever river runs outside of it, so that they could build the stadium. And that stadium, interestingly enough, used to have a track around the inside. They've since taken it out and then renovated the stadium and enclosed it. But it used to be a straight horseshoe with a track. And that's where Jesse Owens, the famous Olympian who Hitler refused to shake his hand at the 36 Berlin Olympics, he did his training there. And that's another reason why Ohio Stadium's historic. But yeah, at any rate, I'm going back to the picks. They shouldn't struggle. They play Ohio, their little brother in the state, and they win 49-7. Moving on, Penn State playing at Beaver Stadium, another great stadium that I'd like to attend the game at, and preferably a whiteout. They play Villanova, shouldn't struggle. They win 42-7. For my upset pick of the week, remember earlier I was talking about Billy Napier having a bounce back game that he needs? Well, that takes us to Tiger Stadium in Red Stick or Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Florida, now I was at the game last week, and Florida obviously had some bad play calls, and DJ Lagway didn't play his best. South Florida we should have easily beat them by 3 or 4 touchdowns at least. If we would have played our A game. I think that loss humbled us, and it made us realize some things that the players, if they love Napier as they say that they do, they're going to play for him. Not only for him, but they can also salvage their season. Because even though we had a very bad loss last week, yes, we've still theoretically, even though it's an uphill climb, we could still finish 9-3. We just got to see what we're made of. We've got to channel our inner toughness and do a gut check. It would also help this week if South Florida proved they were real and ended up beating the U in Hard Rock Stadium, because that would increase our resume if we continue to win. It'd probably also catapult them into the top 10, if not the top 5, because at that point, they would have beat 3 straight successively ranked teams in the nation. But I look at LSU, and I watched a little bit of their game versus Clemson. And they're struggling on offense. Like, they failed to establish a ground game. We get Caleb Banks back this weekend. He was one of the catalysts for our defense last year in Billy Napier's run. LSU has a good defense. That we're very similar teams. Like, this might come down to a kick or something, I feel like. Because LSU has a really good defense, but when we're playing our best, we do too, minus the last few minutes of the South Florida game. But I think LSU is worse on offense than us, and I think that our defense can stop that. I look for this to be somewhat low-scoring game. And weird things always happen in this rivalry, always. Mostly have gone in LSU's favor with, like, the fake punts and all of that stuff under Les Miles, or the fake field goals that have led to the wins. It's been a fun series to watch. It's been frustrating as a Gator fan, but as an LSU fan, they've definitely enjoyed it. But as an outsider, if I'm neutral, like, heck yeah, this has been one of the most fun rivalries to watch. The fan bases do not like each other. LSU is right up there to me with Florida State in terms of, I don't like any of our rivals, but I have a decent respect for Georgia. I don't like them, but Kirby Smart has proven to me that he's one of the best minds in college football, and Georgia has earned respect in my book, even though I can't stand them and their fans. Yeah, LSU is up there, so is Miami and FSU. I put them up there with that, so I would love to upset them this weekend, and I think Florida does. Florida proves the toughness and that they're better conditioned than LSU in the fourth quarter, and we shock the media and all of the college football fans out there in upsetting LSU in Tiger Stadium. And instead of calling for Napier's job, they're going to be calling for Brian Kelly's job. Go Gators! I'll be there yelling that. I'll be at Tiger Stadium. Baton Rouge is only 2.5 hours from me in Biloxi, so I will definitely be there. Number 4, Oregon. They need to play somebody. Yes, I'm calling Oregon out because having Phil Knight as one of your biggest donors, you should have a championship right now because dude's a billionaire, donates probably millions to that university. Oregon is always going to have the players. That's why I tell people, pump the brakes on Dan Lanning. And next week I'll go, especially if we lose this weekend, I'll go into who I think should replace Napier. Honestly, I think Strickland waits until after the season to make that decision if we lose. But anyway, back to Oregon. I'm not sold on Dan Lanning. And I don't see why all the Gator fans are saying, oh, hire Dan Lanning. Truth is, anybody can win at Oregon. Like, you get the best athletes because Nike speaks for itself. That recruits for Oregon. They haven't happened to win a championship, though. They've gotten to the game, I believe, twice and have lost both times. Yeah, one in 2014 to Ohio State and the other to Auburn in 2010. But those were, was that Chip Kelly? I know one of them was. I think the other one might have been Helfrich, but that's when they had Marcus Mariota and he won the Heisman. But yeah, that's what I'm saying. Oregon's good. One of those teams that's good with no matter whoever they have as a coach because Nike recruits for them. I say if Dan Lanning gets another job, like say I don't know, hopefully Florida doesn't get him though. For one, he was coached at Georgia. And that's the only way really to tell. I mean, but to my point, Oregon always chokes in big games. So it doesn't matter who the coach is, like Nike will bring them recruits. It just does. And especially now with the NIL contracts. But I've got number 4, Oregon over Northwestern. This conference realignment is so confusing to me. Like, ever since they took away the geography that made sense in all of this, like, I don't know, for crying out loud, Stanford and Cal, who are in California on the Pacific Coast, are now in the Atlantic Coast Conference. What kind of sense does that make? But it is what it is in modern day college football. As Oregon can travel to Penn State for a football game across the country because they're in the same conference. But moving on, number 5, the U plays number 18, South Florida. So this is Florida's next opponent versus their prior opponent. Honestly, I think South Florida's luck runs out. I do think Alex Golesh has a better. I don't know how good of a coach he is, but interestingly enough, he was not born in the U.S. He was born in Russia. He's from Moscow, Russia. And he grew up there as like a soccer guy or something and then immigrated to the United States and started coaching defense at a high school. And then he worked his way up. I love stories like that. And honestly, that guy knows X and O's better than Billy Napier, and he proved that last Saturday. But I think the U is just too good. Like, they're too athletic. Cristobal, I wouldn't say he's a great coach, but he's better than Napier. He's really focused on the trenches, the offensive, defensive line, because he was an offensive lineman. So with that being said, he also realizes the importance of winning the battles in the trenches. So he's recruited well there on both sides of the ball, and to include the specialty positions. South Florida's fight runs out this weekend. I think it might be close in the first quarter, but I think the U comes out on top, and they dominate in the second half. And I think number 5 Miami beats number 18 South Florida by the score of 37-14. You've had a good run, South Florida. I give you credit for that. I'm a fan of Alex Golesh. And honestly, if he does somehow upset Miami this weekend and they keep going, then yes, I would put him at the near the top or at the top of Napier replacements. Moving on, I thought about this being an upset pick, but Tennessee has lost 8 straight to Georgia, and Kirby Smart is just too good of a head coach, like especially defensive mind. In the games that they played Tennessee, especially when Tennessee was slated to upset them or win, Georgia ended up shoving that right back in the media's face. Tennessee fan, like I said, that stadium is intimidating up at Rocky Top. And apparently like 2 years ago, they set the NCAA decibel record. I've honestly never seen it measured at Florida Field, but I guarantee you it's gotten above 130 a few times, at least on the field. I would love to ask and see if somebody could measure it on the field during the Texas game, because I know that's going to be rowdy. But Tennessee got like 137 decibels apparently 2 years ago in this game. I think it'll be close early, but Kirby's athletes and their depth end up showing up in the second half. I think number 6 Georgia beats number 15 Tennessee for the, I think, 9th year in a row, something like that. A score of 24-13. Number 7, I've got Texas. They kind of play some cupcakes before they come to the swamp. Talking about a game-saving job, or a job-saving game. I'm sorry, I said that backwards. For Napier, if he loses, honestly, I think he has to win 2 out of the next 3 to get job security. I think Texas shouldn't struggle this weekend versus UTEP. They beat them 51-10. I think Arch's last name takes him so far. I mean, he's a good quarterback, but against better competition. Like, I was watching that Ohio State game. He just fell flat on his face. But, yeah, they win. Number 8, Notre Dame Fighting Irish plays Texas A&M at Touchdown Jesus. That is a venue I want to see as well. I think Florida actually, I don't know because the SEC is going to a 9-game schedule now, but I think Florida actually plays a home-and-home series with Notre Dame in 2029 and 2030. If that's the case, I'm going to get tickets to that. I want to go see Florida play them at Notre Dame Stadium. But they host Texas A&M. I kind of went back and forth on this game, but I think the fact that Notre Dame's playing at home and Marcus Freeman is a smart coach despite losing to the U last week, I think they get a narrow victory over Texas A&M. I think they score in the last minute to make it 24-21. Number 9, Illinois. I still don't understand why Illinois is ranked that high. I mean, Bielema was a decent coach, but I don't know. I haven't watched him yet this year, but it's just that seems out of place to me. Like, I bet you that team, despite that high ranking, will finish with like at least 5 losses. But they beat Western Michigan by the score of 33-10. Number 11, South Carolina plays at home versus Vanderbilt in what's that thing they do before? It's not Inner Sandman's Virginia Tech. I don't know, but they do some kind of thing, some kind of entrance that's pretty cool. I just can't think of what it's called, but yeah, they'll be doing that on Saturday versus Vandy, classic SEC, old SEC East matchup. And Vandy's been running around behind the scenes knocking people off. Like, apparently Virginia Tech had them up last week, like 17-0, and Vanderbilt came back and beat them 37-20. I believe if they are able to upset South Carolina this week, they'll be ranked. That guy Clark Lee has done an absolutely phenomenal job there. And honestly, that's one of my dark horse candidates. If he can take a team like Vanderbilt and make them competitive, that's his coaching alone. Like, granted, the transfer portal aids to that, but I would have Clark Lee in discussion as Florida's next head coach, especially if they upset South Carolina this weekend. And I think they come close, but I think Lenora Sellers and the boys pull it out at the very end. I think South Carolina beats Vanderbilt on a Lenora Sellers run in the last 30 seconds by the score of 28-27. And obviously they make the extra point. For my upset pick of the week, besides Florida and LSU, that's why in the preview I had upsets with the S in parentheses and then question mark at the end. I've got number 12, Clemson, going into Georgia Tech. Haynes King, I don't know if you watched him. Last year, Georgia had to send up a prayer to keep their streak alive in Sanford Stadium because Haynes King single-handedly almost beat them. Watch out for Georgia Tech this year, I'm telling you. They beat somebody pretty good who they played last week, too, and they're 2-0. I think Clemson, they've been kind of struggling. LSU beat them. Like, that's why I think Florida has good chances this weekend as well, not to go off on much of a tangent. But we don't know how good Clemson is because they struggled with Troy last week. And LSU beat them, and they out-finessed them, I guess, at the end of the fourth. It was only a touchdown game. Clemson was down 16-0 to Troy. I mean, granted, they came back. But Georgia Tech is going to give them all they can handle and more in Atlanta. And I think Georgia Tech upsets Clemson by the score of 35-24. Watch out for Haynes King. He's a dark horse for the Heisman. Number 13, I've got Oklahoma, who I still think is overrated. Yes, they had a nice win against Michigan last week, but I don't understand the sense. And they won a bowl game to become bowl eligible last year. So they barely had a winning record. They went 7-6, and it could have very easily gone 6-7. I guess Mateer, their quarterback, he's very good. I think he was the number one quarterback in the transfer portal last year, and a former 5-star, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look that up. But he definitely made a difference versus Michigan, I'll tell you that. But it's still early, and we don't even know how good Michigan is. But we won't be able to tell how good Oklahoma really is this weekend either. Actually, probably not until they play Texas, because they play Temple this weekend. Temple and Rutgers, they have gone back and forth with the two worst bottom feeders of the NCAA Power 5 schools. I remember when they were both in the Big East, and it was hilarious because Miami would beat both of them 65-0 every time they played. And Temple actually got kicked out of the Big East because they sucked so bad. I think it was 99 or something like that, or early 2000s. But I think Oklahoma beats Temple by the score of 76-3. Number 14, Iowa State. They're now 3-0. They're well coached. They play Arkansas State this weekend, which should be a tune-up game for them. I think they beat Arkansas State by a score of 54-20. Number 14, Alabama. Roll Tide. You see, it's funny. I live 15 miles from the Alabama border here. And last year, so people here on the whole, like in southern Mississippi, are LSU fans. Like, there's more LSU fans than anyone else. But last year when I first got here, that was the first year that Saban wasn't the coach. Last year was DeBoer's first year. And so nobody knew how it was going to do. But that is my point. You see bandwagon fans just disappear off the face of the earth. Because when Alabama is not doing well, those people become LSU fans or Mississippi State fans. That's probably the third most supported is Mississippi State. And then, of course, you got a few Ole Miss, but I'd say Ole Miss is more like up north to the central and northern part of the states. But, yeah, I think Alabama rebounds. I mean, they won last week against a garbage school, but I think they get a nice solid win versus Wisconsin. And they beat Wisconsin by the score of 41-16. Moving on. I've got, oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Alabama was 19, not 14. But now I got Ole Miss playing Arkansas. I think Ole Miss hammers Arkansas. Lane Kiffin will be another one to watch. He's got the personality needed to win championships that I was talking about earlier. He's got that Steve Spurrier-esque personality where you throw jabs at your opponents and win the psychological edge. It seems like Lane always chokes. That's the only thing to kind of, I wouldn't say be nervous about, be cautious about, because, I mean, he's almost made it into the playoff at a school like Ole Miss. Just imagine what he can do at Florida. My opinion about Lane Kiffin is, I realize it's not popular with a lot of Florida fans, but I would rather have somebody here that wins championships than somebody who is a nice guy and underperforms and doesn't get Florida the Gator standard. That's what I'm saying. I mean, there's a fine line, yeah, but I want to win championships. Moving on, number 20, Utah. They play Wyoming. Wyoming is also undefeated. Sometimes, like, I'll watch those, like, Mountain West games late at night because they're a few hours behind. Same with the Pac-12 after dark. Those games were a lot of fun to watch. And I've watched Wyoming a few times, and they play some people pretty tough. I think they'll give number 20 Utah a challenge this week, but I think Utah wins. I like Kyle Whittingham. He's a good guy, classy coach. One of the longest tenured head coach, and he wins. He does it the right way there, and he wins. He wins a lot. He's a good coach. And I think Utah wins by the score of 23-17. I got number 21, Texas Tech, over Oregon State by the score of 34-13. Texas Tech getting the NIL deals with that oil money. Number 23, Michigan, plays Central Michigan. Shouldn't struggle at all. What's interesting is these two schools, I think, like Yisplanny, I guess that's where Central Michigan's at, is only like a few minutes from Ann Arbor. So those schools are like really close. They're just like down the road. Michigan beat Central Michigan by the score of 48-12. Number 24, Auburn. They play South Alabama. At home, they shouldn't struggle. Hugh Freeze, he's on the hot seat too, but I mean, if he loses this game, it'll be on fire, but they shouldn't lose. I got Auburn 45-17. Number 25, I've got Missouri. They play Billy Napier's old team, Louisiana, and they beat them by the score of 42-14. For my bonus pick of the week, we've got a battle of the Carolina directional schools. We've got Coastal Carolina Chanticleers, named after a character in the Canterbury Tales, I believe it was, which is basically a chicken. They play East Carolina, the Pirates, and I got Coastal Carolina over East Carolina by the score of 17-14. For my other D1 Florida schools, the only two that I haven't mentioned are playing each other. Florida Atlantic plays Florida International. I'm going to say Florida Atlantic beats Florida International by 1 point. This game is in, I forget where FIU is. It's either in Fort Lauderdale but it's at FIU. It's either in Fort Lauderdale or Miami, somewhere down there in that concrete jungle of North Cuba. But I got FAU over FIU by a score of 35-34. Pray for my safety this weekend in Baton Rouge. The good news is my sister and her husband are driving down from Texas, so I'm going to get to tailgate with them and spend some time with them and her friends. So that'll be a lot of fun. But yeah, go Gators. Let's shock the world. Aydt signing off. Please pray for this crazy world. Just continue to love people, be kind, but be bold. Be warriors for Christ. Aydt signing off. God bless.